Hey guys, and welcome back to another edition of the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. And Bob going to join us in just a few moments, guys. And of course, I am your co-host, Ray Russell, along for the ride here. And first off, Bob and I just want to apologize. We missed our very first week of the Wrestling Stoop last week. Bob was fighting a cold of sorts. Didn't sound too good. Had a pretty bad cough, and he still wanted to troop through it. And I said, Bob, just take the time and relax. Rest up. We'll be back. No problem. And here we are, guys, a week later, but better late than never. And as promised this week, we're going to salute Black History Month, guys. Again, a few days late, but I don't think it hurts to salute the African-American heritage in professional wrestling any time of year. And just some of the names I'm sure likely to come up here today: the Big Cat, Ernie Ladd, Ron Simmons, Butch Reed, Rocky Johnson, the list goes on. And before we get into our topic here this week, guys, just a quick reminder that you can listen to the Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop and our sister shows, like the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF Project. Also, the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. 3 projects right now over there on Regional Wrestling, including Georgia 81, UWF 86, and Memphis 1985. Also a good time to promote a good buddy of Bob's, Barry Rose, and his partner, the Captain Nick Massey, and their Glory Days Grapple Concast, which is now live, up and running. Be sure to check that out. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And be sure to follow us on social media, guys. You can follow and friend Bob over at Facebook.com/PoorBobRoop. You can also follow me, Ray Russell, over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade, and subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. And before we jump into things, one final piece of business, quite frankly, the most important of them all. I'm talking about that $5 all-access tier over at Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, Patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts for just $5, including, and this is just a few of the gifts you guys get, like my insanely detailed book-like show notes, pages and pages of show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Wrestling, and the Monday Warfare Podcast. You'll also get digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure, early access to many of the podcasts here on WrestleCopia, and of course, our Patreon exclusive watch-along series covering many past WWF and WCW events. And you get all of that, plus random bonus video drops, and so much more for just $5. No subscription, cancel anytime. Show your support. Give it a try for a month, and I think you'll like all of the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into keeping all of the great shows here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network up and running for the months and the years to come. And with all of that said, time to jump back into things here this week. After what we'll call a week's vacation, and well-deserved, I may add, welcome back, Bob Roop, to the show.
Oh, thanks, Ray, man. I tell you, it seems like I've been coughing and hacking for a month now. It's good to be back where I can actually spend some time with clear lungs. I'm glad you're feeling better too, my friend.
Yeah, I was sick the week before you, and then as I got better, you caught the bug way up in Michigan, and then my wife got sick also, so she's still fighting whatever she's got going on too. But so it's been, the kids bring things home from school, and I don't have to tell you that. You're on a bus.
Yeah, so. Think about mine. I wrote it in a Facebook post that 2 out of 5 kids on my bus for the last month and a half, 2 out of 5 on average, and they've been different, but 2 out of 5 have been sick or have coughing or sneezing or something.
Yeah.
And their school has 500 kids. So if you go on that average, 200 kids in that school are coughing or hacking or doing something like that too also. So my kids interact with those kids all day. So by the time my 5 get back on the bus, they've been exposed to maybe 20 different maladies, everything. Strep throat, sinus, every malady you can think about, pneumonia. And, they come back on the bus, and it's a miracle I haven't been sick before I was. And so I knock on wood, I'm going back real quick now, and I'm going to be wearing a mask. I didn't even wear a mask during most of COVID, but I'm going to be wearing one now.
Yeah, well, I can't say that I blame you. Last week was the first week we've actually missed since we started this podcast, and I didn't really feel bad about it. I thought we've put out a lot of good stuff over the last 4+ months, and I'm not saying that we deserved a vacation so early on in the show's infancy, but at the same time, I was just getting over things, and you were still kind of dealing with it, and I said, just go get some rest. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. It's just 1 week. I'm sure people want you back 100%. And I don't know that either one of us are 100% yet, but we're back on here anyway and ready to roll.
Well, we did talk about that. I remember the first time we had a 1 day or 2 day delay. I think it was a holiday, and you waited a day, and I panicked because I had read. I don't know anything about podcasts. The one thing I had read prior to starting out was that the worst thing you could do was miss having a show on it.
Sure.
Time is supposed to be on, because I think a lot of fly-by-night people, who aren't ready, aren't set, haven't established a base of operations like you have, that get on there and it doesn't go so well. They don't get rich in a month or two, and they just drop it.
Yeah.
And disappoint the heck out of people. And I could see that. Yeah. And so when we were a day late, I panicked. Remember, I called you. What's going on? And then I thought about it. Wait a minute. You're not some fly-by-night guy. You're established. You've got a great website. You've been operating for years. You do the work of 4 or 5 people. I'm amazed at all the stuff that you do. And you have all kinds of credibility in the world. So when we had to miss last week, it bothered me because I like to be, I like to communicate.
Sure.
I'm sharing my life. I mean, what could be more, thrilling and, rewarding than that, to share yourself with people that you care about. And but I wasn't worried about, we're going to lose any listeners or anything, because we're human, just like everybody else. Everybody gets sick.
Well, we're back now, and that's that's what counts, I suppose. Unfortunately, as we were texting back and forth the other day, the final text of the night I sent you, you probably already went to bed at that point, and I said, I got some bad news for you, Bob. I just read that actually it was right as I was finishing recording my last podcast with Barry Rose. Me and Barry were talking about it briefly, and it came out that Ole Anderson passed away, and you spent a lot of time around Ole, both in Georgia and in WCW.
Yeah, I had the opportunity, and it really was a blessing, because the years I spent with him was 82, 83 till 85. Mm-hmm. About 2.5 years. And I mean, every day, worked in the office, and I was on the road some weeks when he wasn't, but I probably saw him 200 days a year. So yeah. And I liked Ole. I respected Ole. And that was one of the things that was different, was that he was a guy I could respect. And it was for the same reason that a lot of people didn't like him, because he was a straight shooter. I mean, he didn't always put me over and say, well, you're great, Bob. Once in a while, I say, well, you lost a little of that pork on you, whatever. But he was a guy you could respect. He was tremendously capable. I booked 3 territories total, and all at different times. He was booking 3 or 4 territories at one time, booking like 12 times a night.
Yeah, I mean, I know Georgia had the A and B towns certain nights, as did Crockett and things. So yeah, he had a lot going on his plate. I think he said in hindsight at one time, like, I realized that was stupid. I should have never done that. I don't really know why he said that, because he still managed to do it, But that's crazy. That
well, he was getting a percentage from each show.
Yeah.
So he was making a fortune. He probably been making $20,000 a week.
Yeah, they said he was a millionaire before he ever got to Crockett. Before when Crockett went national. So long before the horse,
he
was already a millionaire. Right? Yeah. I saw a lot of people say the same thing about Ole online after his passing, from just some people that behind the business you don't really know, all the way to like guys that knew him for years, like a Les Thatcher or whatever, and they all said it was literally almost the same exact line. No matter where you stood with Ole Anderson, at least you knew where you stood with Ole Anderson. He didn't have a problem telling you.
Yeah. And he didn't say, unless you were in some way being negative. Yeah. He didn't say get out of my sight. He would say something to you and just say it, and then you could respond if you wanted to, like with F you or
sure,
whatever. So, I wanted to be, I also read some of the things that people read, and I wanted to write something also. But I knew that you and I were going to be doing a show about Ole.
Right.
And I wanted to wait, and that's why I wanted to say it now, that because I haven't been out there with anything online, on Facebook or any other medium, doesn't mean that I don't care. I started saying goodbye to Ole about 20 years ago when he got sick. I was seeing him every year at the Deep South, the Gulf Coast reunion.
Okay.
He would come, and when he first started coming, he could walk and all that. Right. By the last few times I saw him there, he was in a wheelchair. And he just, with Ole, there were no opportunities for new adventures, new things to talk about. Everything that he brought was what had happened in the past that and he was glad to talk about it. He always had a new audience. But I felt like, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed that part of it, being with him. And I didn't care what he talked about. He was my friend, and I enjoyed being with him. But I felt like I was saying goodbye to him a long time ago, because he was, each year he would remember less and less. But still, still a guy you could respect, even in a wheelchair. Just because he was physically, handicapped or, limited, doesn't mean there wasn't anything there. Yeah, he wasn't going to jump up and pound on you, but he'd probably bark at you enough to break you down.
He was diagnosed with MS. Man, it's got to be, I don't want to say 20 years ago, but it was a long time. He had that for quite a long while.
Well, he had the money to buy the best medicine available, and he did. And he tried, to slow it and deal with it the best way he could. But it just, it's once they have no cure. Eventually it got him. I mean, I'm surprised he lasted as long as he did. I heard something the last year that meant, his mental state was fragmenting, and I didn't really want to see him like that, and maybe that's a detriment on my part. First of all, it's hard to get there. It's one thing. I'm not able to jet set around the country at will. But anyway, we'll be talking about Ole later on. He was special.
Yeah. We hopefully, next week, knock on wood, everybody's healthy and everything goes the way, we want it to. We'll be back next week with an entire episode dedicated to Ole Anderson. Like I said, you spent a lot of time around him, working not just in the ring for him, but working behind the scenes with him. Whether it was, making some of the towns for him when he wasn't there, when he couldn't be there in Georgia, working in the office there, but also later on when he got the nod to become booker once again for World Championship Wrestling for Ted Turner. He brought you in as an agent there. So, we might even have a story or two that kind of coincides here this week with some of the guys we're going to be getting into about that time frame. But I'm looking forward to next week in Ole Anderson.
Oh, me too. Thanks, Ray. And that'll be good.
Last week marked the end of February, and we'd planned to do an episode on Black History Month, obviously celebrating some of the African-American stars that, were the trailblazers that paved the way for today, all the great stars of today. But it doesn't have to be February to celebrate Black history, and unfortunately we did miss last week, but we're back this week, and we haven't forgotten about the topic that we promised. And I thought this week maybe we get into some of the legendary historical figures in professional wrestling of the African-American descent.
Well, that's great. And coincidentally, short time of breaking into business, I've managed to go on a 7-week tour with Ernie Ladd and Rocky Johnson.
Yeah, that's right. Your first tour of Japan, I remember. Yeah.
So here I am, brand new in the business. Now, those guys weren't legends yet, although Ernie Ladd was legendary. He was already, I think,
straight off the gridiron, he was legendary.
I think he'd already been inducted into the San Diego Charger Hall of Fame for football. I think they inducted him a couple of years after he retired, because he was the best lineman they ever had, I think. So in another sport, of course, but so was I. Amateur wrestling, that's another sport from pro wrestling. But
right.
You bring in credentials from somewhere else, I think it adds to your, well, let's put it this way. If you got somebody, this is a question we'll have to discuss at length sometime. If you got somebody that's working under an assumed, let's say, alias or identity, as this persona they create, what is the backstory of that persona? I mean, it can't be anything real because it's a made-up character.
Sure.
So what do you tell? say some guy's a great big muscular guy that broke in that now, and he's some kind of fierce warrior of some kind, and his backstory, what he did before he got in the wrestling business, he sold shoes. Are they gonna put that? Yeah, here we have Godzilla reinvented, and yeah, he used to sell shoes. Yeah, no. So I'm always curious about what kind of backstory a person has.
Right.
That, and most of the time you don't know anything. But with Ernie, I knew that this guy had proven himself. Also in college, his college exploits were
right.
Yeah, he was top. He was noteworthy. Even the black colleges in those days weren't getting the kind of press that was like a Southern Cal or an Alabama or one of the major schools would get in football. But his exploits were so noteworthy that he did make the news from Gramblings. So yeah. So anyway, with starting out with Ernie and Rocky, and of course neither one of them had enough of a professional wrestling career to reach that legendary status, but they were on their way. We know they made it. So the fact that I got to see them during the inception or during the development of their status, it was nice.
So you worked the Florida territory quite often there, but you also worked Japan with the Rocky and Ernie Ladd and whatnot. And we've talked off air just a little bit, because I asked you months ago. I named some of the old timers, like the say like Bobo Brazil. I was just name dropping guys to you if you had any memories or whatnot. And I think you said you never recalled actually working a show with Bobo. Now, working as long as you did, it's possible that you guys did work on the same card at some point in some time, but clearly no real big memories of Bobo Brazil. But there were other guys from the time frame too, like Art Thomas. You've mentioned him to me in passing as well. So I don't know if you have any memories of Art, because he was probably 40 or so by the time. Now he worked till, I think he retired somewhere around 80, 81, but he was already probably about 40 when you broke in. So I wasn't sure if you remember crossing paths with him at all.
Well, I do. I remember being on cards with him, but for some reason, I don't know why. I think he was kind of quiet.
Okay.
I don't remember ever talking to him. Now, he was a babyface, so if I was a heel, I wouldn't have been. Well, in a dressing room, you could have, but probably wouldn't have been unless I was working against him.
Right.
And I don't remember ever working against him.
Okay.
But he was, he was a big, tall, impressive-looking guy. He had weird biceps. He developed his biceps by starting out with his arms bent at the elbow to about 90 degrees. He was only lifting, say, from the waist up, instead of from his thighs up. So he had his upper biceps. There's two different muscles in there. That's why bi. And the lower bicep didn't get developed, so his upper arm stuck out like a hockey puck. And it was very, it was
interesting.
Very noticeable.
I never noticed that in the pictures.
Yeah, it wasn't. Believe me, I was pre-med in college for a couple of years, and I had to take anatomy and physiology, so we studied the human body.
Yeah.
And actually did cadavers and that stuff where you got to see muscles on corpses. And so, that was weird. But, to get what he got, it took a lot of work. He probably did who knows how many hundreds of thousands of reps
sure.
to get those hockey pucks.
He was put together, man. That's
yeah,
sure.
He was. Well, he was credible, and he didn't. All I remember about his work was he was never down on the mat for very long, if at all, which was smart because he was sick. Well, the guy was 6'3", 4", great big tall guy, and to take it'd be like taking Hogan down, putting him in a hold for 20 minutes, like Johnny Valentine did with Jack Brisco. You'll kill a guy. It'd be like taking Andre down.
Sure.
Trying to keep the hole. You kill the guy.
Right.
Yeah. McMahon Sr. Told Andre, no. I mean, you and I would think, we got a guy that's 7 feet tall that can drop kick and do flying head scissors. We got to exploit that. Senior said, no, don't do any of that. I don't want you off your feet.
Yeah.
Don't go off your feet. You're the immovable object.
And that's
pretty
much when he really became the giant from that point
yes.
forward.
Yeah. And of course, his work in the ring was he never even worked hard enough to break a sweat because he didn't have to do anything.
Right.
It probably contributed to him gaining about 150 pounds over
It
the
also
next
may
10
have helped him last a little longer too, though, longevity-wise.
It might.
But you're right. You're right. It probably did lead to a lot of the weight gain as well, not really having to do a whole lot out there. Unfortunate. That's just, the life Andre was handed in regards to, his physical health. He really couldn't control a lot of that. I was just, looking over some of the old names here. We talked about Dory Dixon. You said you knew he was still working when you were working, but you don't really remember crossing paths with him. What about Sweet Daddy Siki? Do you remember seeing him at all anywhere? I know he worked prominently up in Canada, but he was in Australia, Japan, places like that. So I didn't know if you ever came in contact with him.
Yeah, we were in Australia together briefly, a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Seemed like a good enough guy. I didn't get a chance to know him. The story I would tell about him, I really can't tell on our program.
I'll ask you off air then.
Yeah, but he seemed like a good enough guy. I think he had a good career. So, yeah, I just in passing, though. There's some guys I know much better than others, but let's see, Siki's not one of them. Sorry.
Okay. Let's go back to Ernie Ladd for a minute, because you did cross paths with him quite a bit. He was quite a polarizing figure in the locker room from the stories I've heard. I don't know if you've ever heard the story. He used to give King Kong Bundy, a lot of shit. Now, you told the story about you and DiBiase riding around with Bundy, so this kind of goes in with that a little bit. He when they were in the Mid-South together working for Bill Watts, I guess Ernie Ladd would tell him every night, Bundy, you're stealing the paychecks. Every time you cash one, you're stealing money from the promoter, you big fat piece of shit, Bundy. So I guess he used to love messing with Bundy quite a bit.
One of the best ones is the Bundy. I think Watts wanted to turn him babyface, and Bundy didn't want to do it. He refused. And he said, Ernie Ladd said, Bundy, you dumb bastard, you just cost yourself a lot of money. Yeah.
Oh, man. The proverb spoken from the big cat.
Oh, yeah.
Ernie knew the business pretty damn well for a guy who came over from professional football.
Yeah. He was like the ringmaster in a circus over there for Watts. And that's not a negative. It's just that
right.
I don't know if it was out there or times had changed, but when I broke in, I'm going to talk about drugs for a minute. When I broke in, like in Florida, if you got caught with a joint, first of all, it was a felony. So that was some serious stuff. But the promoters were like, Graham was just, he likened it to heroin, So, if you had to be real careful about your habits, about even people knowing about them. Because wrestlers stooge you off if it will get them some kind of advantage. We're out in Louisiana, out there in 81, but all the boys are in the dressing room together, and big table like a big poker table.
Okay.
And Junkyard Dog's on one side, and Jake the Snake's on the other, and Curry on extra.
Oh my God.
Jimmy Garvin, Grizzly Smith. And Ernie's over, it's like a dressing room. There's a little counter. He's got a chair pulled up. He's got his book. Now, don't get me wrong. I knew there was all kinds of drug use going on. I mean, Kerry almost. Somehow they got into, Jake and Junkyard Dog got into a kind of a contest. And Dog pulled out one of these those purple sacks of Hague Pence or, Hague whiskey. And he opened it up and he poured it on their table. And when he opened it up, it was about the size of a big softball. And he poured it out on their table, and I don't know, there was all kinds of things in there. There was something that had to be hash, a big piece of sticky-looking thing about the size of a ping pong ball that had to be hash. All different kinds of pills and different kinds of things. Well, Jake went in his bag. He brought out, I don't remember what kind of container it was. He put down his on the table. Now, at the time, we found out Jake was dating, and this was sometimes done with a purpose, dating a nurse for some reason.
Okay.
And he poured out on the table. It had to be at least 300 or 400 pills of all different kinds of sizes. You had people like who were, some of the guys were looking at that treasure trove on the table, like almost drooling. I don't want to name any names because I don't want to. I
think you already named some of the names already, but that's okay.
Well, I didn't see what the reaction was yet, though. So Grizzly Smith is standing right there, and Grizzly is like he runs he runs the shows. He's like the Bill Watts' man like I was. I ran the shows when
I don't know if you want to
Ole.
compare yourself to Grizzly Smith there, Bob, but I get what you're saying here, business-wise.
Well, he was the one that was supposed to coordinate between the office or the box
right.
office.
Grizz was high up there for Bill.
Yeah, so he's standing there, and I'm thinking, well, they're doing this right in front of him. Jake's his kid.
Kid, right? Yeah.
And anyway, you know that story. And so Ernie's only about 10, 12 feet away, and these guys, all the guys are like, ooh and I. Kerry Von Erich, I'm sorry, rest in peace, Kerry. Kerry was drooling. So I thought, well, I wonder what Ernie thinks about this. He's over there. He's got his book out there. He's leaning over it. I thought, I guess maybe he's not paying attention. I looked over there. I'm not going to say he was, but it looked like to me he was rolling a joint. So, yeah. So I couldn't believe it. You go from that mindset in Florida to just a few years later, whereas, these guys are rather open. All this stuff is illegal. To have those drugs without a prescription. No, you're not.
So I think Buddy Landell got fined enough for all of them, so that's all right. That's what I hear.
I didn't hear that story.
No, but Buddy used to always tell the stories of how Watts would fine him basically like every day for something. So.
Oh yeah, well, Buddy would make it real obvious. Anyway, I was just amazed at what was allowed, what was going on there, and Watts, I'm sure he knew about it, but Junkyard Dog was drawing a lot of money, and Ernie was shepherding all that. He was the one that making it happen. He had the Samoans, but he was also making sure that the matches were good and everything. And Ernie, while we were there, Ernie invited me out, my wife out to his house one day for dinner. And we had a nice dinner, and I remember he cooked okra, and I didn't think I would like it, but the way he cooked it, it was good. I'd never liked it before when I tried it a few times, but I considered that like a privilege. Oh, I got another Ernie Ladd story.
Sure.
We did a thing I want to say Shreveport, Friday night, where I was supposed to jump off the rope during Ted DiBiase's match. I was supposed to jump up on him. And I was supposed to jump off the top rope. He was going to be down in a figure four or something, and I was going to jump across, kind of like Terry did with Jack Brisco.
Right.
I went to, I couldn't be out there. I'd already worked. I'd already wrestled. I couldn't be out there in my same thing in New Orleans. I was talking about. You can't. In Puerto Rico, you can't be out there in your wrestling gear if you've already worked, because if you make a move towards the ring, if people can see you. You make a move towards the ring. In fact, I got another story about going into the ring. But if you make a move towards the ring, there's people waiting to actually buy heel haters. They actually buy seats right on the heel aisle. On the aisle, so that they can interfere with you trying to run into the match.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I ran down. Anyway, I got down there, and I'm in my street clothes, and I had low heel shoes. And when I jumped off, the deal was Ted was supposed to move out of the way. When I landed, he rolled, and as I landed, when I landed on my left foot, he rolled into it, and it turned my ankle. I was amazed not to look down and see my ankle bent off to the side permanently, like it broke it.
Oh yeah.
But all it did is sprained it. About as bad as it can be sprained. I put ice on it within 10 minutes. And I kept ice on it for on and off. We had a big show at the Superdome. That's the one I was talking about earlier with Dr. Steve Williams.
Yeah.
And that was in 4 or 5 days. I kept ice on it. I stayed laid on a couch, kept it elevated because it was a serious sprain. And I wanted to be able to work. And the problem was it was swollen up. I couldn't get a boot on. I had to get the swelling down and keep it down. So I did that. I iced it for like 4 or 5 days. I drove down I lived in Alexandria, about 60, 70 miles from New Orleans. I drove down there and came to the building, and I had it wrapped pretty tight. And Ernie came in, and he said, "Oh, you know what we need to do?" He said, "We needed to do heat and cold. Heat and cold." I said, "No, I don't think so, Ernie." Now, this is a guy that played pro football. Had all kinds of injuries. He had a knee that he'd been treating for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy should know something, So, I mean, he wasn't ordering me. He couldn't do that. It's my body, my health. But I said, okay, well, I'll try it. Now, again, I've worked for 4 or 5 days to get this thing down small enough to get my ankle, my foot, my boot.
Uh-huh.
So he got a bucket of hot water from the shower, and I'm sitting on this kind of like where you tape ankles, a trainer tapes ankles, those flat tables,
right?
Like a chiropractic table. So I was sitting on that table, and I put my ankle it wasn't swollen much at all anymore. I put it in the hot water. My ankle had been cold off most of the time for the last about 4 or 5 days. When that hot water hit, when the feeling of hot water hit, it's like somebody was stabbing knives or toothpicks into my ankle on all sides. Okay. And the other thing was, and I was watching because I had an idea what was going to happen. As we watched it, you could see it. It started growing. My ankle started growing. And I immediately pulled it out of that hot water and put the ice back around it. And I said, I had the big ice bag on top of it. And I said, I don't know about the hot part. I don't know. Ernie said, well, yeah, I guess not. I said, yeah. I said, man, I need to keep it small enough to get my foot in it. Now, that's the match I went out against Dr. Death, the one I'm telling you about, where he was throwing me around by my left arm and all that, or my right arm. And, I went out there on not bad pens, really. He did take my ankle, and I had a boot on there. My boot was pretty tight, and if I'd have jumped with my boot on that weekend before, it wouldn't have hurt me probably. But having no support for the ankle, it was easy enough to sprain it. Yeah, that's the Ernie Ladd story.
He was trying to help. It worked for him.
No, not to diss him or anything. He was trying to, but he was a take charge guy.
Right. Yeah. You've told me that. You told me even in Japan, he wasn't like a hierarchy above you guys, but he was always trying to just kind of, I don't want to say control situation, but just kind of, like you said, take charge. Like, all right, what's going on? This is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So he seemed like he always wanted to make sure, to help any way he could.
Well, he was older than a lot of people because he already had his pro career. So he was probably in his mid to late 30s, maybe more. But one time in Japan, Frankie Lane got drunk. I mean, too drunk. He was like, it looked like he was going to croak or something. He was passed out.
Okay.
So what they thought the thing to do was to put him in cold water, and that was like a urban legend or whatever you call it, the old wives' tale.
Okay.
Because medically, that's the wrong thing. People who are passed out, their nervous system is already low because that's why they're passed out. The electromagnetic activity on their brain waves are not making it anywhere.
Okay.
So you want to put them in hot water. And Ernie kept insisting on these guys putting Frankie Lane in the cold shower. And I tried to tell him, what are you going to do, fight him? I couldn't fight him. I said, Ernie, I'm telling you. I said, get a second opinion if you can, but that's the wrong thing to do. You might kill him doing this.
And you got that from your background in medical, I'm assuming.
Yeah, as a medic in the service, yeah.
Right, yeah.
We had a year and a half of training. The Special Forces training, the medics and Special Forces teams that went into countries, the medic was expected in all kinds of, now in our case, it was Southeast Asia, so we were trained in all kinds of diseases of that habitat, of that, that part of the world. All the diseases, we were also trained to do amputations, tracheotomies, debridement of gunshot wounds, appendectomies. We were trained to do all that. So, I had a year and a half straight every day going to school, not weekends, but on Monday through Friday going to the best school the Army had to offer for that kind of stuff. So I was an advanced medical specialist.
Right.
It would have taken like 5 years of going to college to get that same kind of training.
Sure.
So, I knew what I was talking about. And I mean, you just look it up.
So
Ernie, now you can,
you can just Wikipedia or Google it or something. Yeah.
Google it. Yeah. But he was in charge and everybody listened to him. And, what are you going to do? I'm not going to fight him about it.
Right.
So,
Frankie Lane lived to see another day. So no harm, no foul, but I get what you're saying though. Like Ernie may not have always made the best decision, but he was always trying. He was trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, he was forceful, and it was. if you are 6'6", 7, 8, whatever, and you've been All-American, you've been All-Pro, you've been and you're in a very violent sport, whereas mano a mano, you're going against another guy or sometimes two guys from the other side are trying to block you. He was a defensive tackle. They're trying to keep you from maiming their quarterback or tackling their running backs. You know, you're fighting them, and you make the All-Pro stage. You're in select company. So for him to come in even to a fairly new profession, and plus he was a college graduate too. He was an educated man. So it was only natural for him to, well, what's a big guy like that going to do? Sit in the back and, right. Let Barney Fife run the show?
Sure,
no.
Sure, yeah.
And, but he always did let's put it this way. I don't know if it was a combination of his bearing, his personality, his strength of character, and maybe technique, his interpersonal skills. But I never got mad at him about it. I never thought, what a jerk or anything like that.
Yeah.
I thought he was wrong. Obviously, I thought he was wrong, but everybody is. And also, treatment that works on you might not work on somebody else, Ernie.
Yeah.
So anyway, but the thing is, he was a good guy with a good heart, and he had a lot of guts. Anybody who'll go and work in the South and make challenges to white wrestlers, come on down to the ring, white boy, and I'm going to kick your butt, has got more guts. Believe me, when I made interviews in Iraq, I didn't make a disparaging word of any kind.
Well, no, to say the least.
Everything I had to say was praising.
We wouldn't be doing this right now, I guarantee.
No, I was praising my privilege to wrestle with their great champion. And yes, no, I wasn't saying anything about bring that Iraqi geek down the ring, I'll kick his butt in front of 250,000 of his own people. Yeah. No, I never would have made it to the ring.
So you gave me a short list of guys here that we can definitely touch on that I know you have a few stories or memories on, but I'm going to jump around with the names. We're not going to do them in a specific order or anything like that because I want to keep the people guessing as they're listening. So we went back and we talked about Ernie Ladd. Let's jump ahead quite a bit here. Let's go into the mid-'80s. And you had a hand in working with Lex Luger when he broke in, but you also had a hand in working with another man by the name of Ron Simmons in the Florida territory. Now, Hiro Matsuda gets a lot of the credit for training Ron, but I started, I was thinking, wait a minute, Bob was down there at the same time, and you were kind of doing some of this. I'm not saying you were doing what Hiro's doing, but like you said, you were on the road with Lex for 6 months straight. So, just curious, what did they have you doing with Ron when he broke in?
Well, I only worked with him a couple times because I was working in the office there, and I think it was when he was first starting. Him and a guy named another football player. Ron was an All-American football player at Florida State. Another football player went to Bethune-Cookman, I think, a guy named Dewey Forte.
Yeah, he didn't make it.
Was All-American. And, I got a funny story about Dewey.
Okay.
But they were breaking in, and I don't know why. I was coming through there. Maybe I saw him in there. And I knew Ron from somewhere. And they were getting ready to start. I do remember showing them how to hit the ropes because that was the one where I'd been out. I hadn't worked for about 6 months. And just by not having staying in practice, by me bouncing off the ropes 4 or 5 times, the next day I was sore. It was like somebody had whacked me with a baseball bat back there in my lats. But I just showed them a few things, and then I didn't see him again until when I was working for Ole.
Yeah.
In fact, it ties in with the Butch Reed story because Butch and Ron were partners.
Right.
But
I remember you said you had a Reed story. We'll save that, but we'll touch on that today. We'll definitely go over that story today. Actually, you can tell that next. It really doesn't matter. I was just curious how much time you spent with Ron when he first broke in. And I do remember Dewey Forte. He worked for about a year or two, just jumping around down in Florida. I think he went over to Dallas for a little bit. The outlaw Dallas territory. It was called Wild West or something outside of Dallas, actually. But yeah, he didn't quite last as long as Ron Simmons did. But that's kind of cool that you were in there and just showed him to hit the ropes, literally.
Well, Dewey. I got a Dewey story. It's just you can't not tell some stories. I said on earlier programs, I was booking and I was running West Palm Beach. Dewey was booked in the show. We had a battle royal that night, and we were going to get him over. And I think it was in a cage. And Dewey's in there, and the last guy who was going to be in there was Dutch Mantell. So I'm watching the match. Everything went good. It looked okay. And all of a sudden, Dewey's got Dutch, and he's like getting ready to, whatever it took to get him out of there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Dewey just stopped and went and opened the gate and got out of the ring and walked back to the dressing room. Just, I mean, think about it. Think about it if you're watching, especially if it's your show. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what, you know, so I couldn't imagine what had happened. So I waited till Dutch came back to his dressing room. I said, Dutch, what did you do? Did you call him a name? Did you call him something? What? I said, what could you have done to run him off? He said, I didn't do anything. I said, well, why would he leave? What did you do? What did you say? He said, once it got down to just me and him, I said, okay, it's time to go home.
Oh my God. I was gonna make that joke. I can't believe that's actually, oh my God. You gotta be joking me.
Oh my God.
What a rib.
What can you say?
Wow.
You know,
and this really happened. Oh my God. This wasn't like a Dutch joke. This really did happen. I mean, like,
no, it happened. And I mean, what do you say to do it? I don't know. There wasn't much to say, but also,
oh my God.
How's this guy going to have a career? You got to be able to remember finishes and, you know, and work towards those finishes.
We might as well end the show now. That's going to be the story of the week. I don't know how you're going to top that one, but I'm looking forward to the Butch Reed story anyway.
Butch Reed's story and bad as far as the topper goes.
So we fast forward to 1990 in Doom. Ron Simmons and Butch Reed are a team here.
Yeah, it was we had a pay-per-view, and Ron and Butch had been teamed up with the Steiner brothers all over the world, all over the country. Mm-hmm. I mean, I want to say the country. We might be in Dallas one night. We might be in North Carolina the next. We might be in Colorado the next night. You never knew.
And this was a pay-per-view? It might have been Capital Combat then, the one with RoboCop?
Well, the one that I don't I don't remember. But now the Butch and Ron had been doing a job for these guys every night. They'd been their shoulders down, or at least one of them. So Ole wanted on the pay-per-view, he wanted to give those, because the pay-per-view has a much more limited audience. It's not quite like national TV. Now, if the Steiners are going to get beat on TBS, on worldwide TV, that's one thing.
Right.
But pay-per-view has a limited audience. I mean, because it's more than just a house show, but he wanted to beat the Steiners and give those guys some credibility back. And so when I went to give the Steiners a finish, the guys are in different dressing rooms. Not the younger Steiner brother, the other one, not the one that got really humongous.
Not Scott. So Rick, the one with the headgear.
Rick said, "F that crap. That's not happening." He said, "You tell Ole to, there's no way that's going to happen." So let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
Ron Simmons was a formidable guy, but Ron was very friendly and outgoing and, likable. No, I wouldn't want to, a million, I don't care. It's my prime as Olympian. I wouldn't want to mess with him because even if I beat him, I'm going to get hurt somehow.
Yeah, I've heard this story with somebody asked Ron, how come nobody ever ribbed you? How come nobody ever messed with you? And he, said, like you said, such a kind guy, but he still said, I'm unfuckwithable. Like you can't, like that's why.
It's one that you maybe think, well, I got a big guy, I mean, so anyway, Ole had given me some discretion. I was like co-booker, but Ole was booker from like A down to say W. And then X, Y, and Z, I was that part of the book.
Okay.
So I was going to use that part. So I thought, now, let me back up again. Butch Reed, I talked about Ron Simmons being outgoing. Butch was real quiet.
Right.
Butch was one of those deep well, you don't know what's in the book. Even when you open the cover, you're not sure.
Yeah, I got that.
Never knew. He was just kind of quiet, but he was scary, I'm telling you. I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't have any reason to be scared of him because I wasn't going to do anything wrong. I was all business and everything. I treated him with respect, but I was hurting. I would certainly have hated to be caught like smacking his kid or anything, So,
sure.
So I got an idea. I said, well, come on, let's go get together with Ole. Well, I took the Steiners down to Ron and Butch's dressing room and walked in and sat down. So I said, well, Ole told me he'd be along in a minute. And there was just one thing I for some reason, I forgot to tell Ole. So I was doing my XYZ part. I said, well, you guys have been working together, having great matches for 3 or 4 weeks now. I've been watching every night, wonderful matches and all that. Want to have the same kind of match, but today we're going to, Ole wants to do something different. We want to do something different. We're going to get Ron and Butch over. So I didn't even look at the Steiners. I was looking at Butch.
Okay.
Butch wasn't looking at me. Butch was looking at Rick Steiner. And he had a look on his face that if Steiner looked at it, if his butt didn't curl up a little bit, I would be surprised, because Butch knew why we were there. He was experienced enough to know why we were there.
Right.
So him and Ron are both looking at the Steiners. Now, Rick Steiner, the younger one, Scott,
yes,
he was fine. He didn't have a problem with it. I mean, Rick Steiner one time said that, I told my wife if she ever thinks about divorcing me, I'll use her for bait and go hunting for gators in the swamp.
Wow.
Crap like that, I mean, he would say that in front of other people. But he, he had a certain mentality. Now, the guy was a great amateur wrestler, University of Michigan. I'm an amateur wrestler. I went to Michigan State. I mean, I feel collegiality there, but certainly not that kind of attitude. What I also didn't appreciate, Rick, if you're out there listening, I'm not even sure you're still around, but if you are.
Oh, he is. He's working in the school system down in Georgia or something now, somewhere down there, I think.
Well, good for him. Good for you, Rick. I'm the best to you, man. But that attitude was the wrong attitude. These guys have been putting him over every night for, a month. And now it's time for you to do this is a work.
Right.
This is a play acting we're doing here, we're going out there and, you guys are great at it. It looks real. And you don't want to give anything back? Well, you know what that implies? You think you're better than they are.
I don't think Scott had even been in the company for a year, so I could see why he was kind of more quiet about the whole situation here. Now, later on in his career, not so much. I would have totally bought it with Scotty that had the issue right before Rick. But back here, I get what you're where you're going at with this. But so Butch Reed just gave him a stare, and that was all it took, or what happened?
That's all it took. That's all it took.
That's kind of, you hear about how badass, and I totally believe every story too, of how badass the Steiners were. But I would have liked to have been very interesting to see a literal shoot. Now, I don't mean wrestling match. I just mean a shoot between these four guys, because everybody was walking out hurt. I assure you, that would have been very interesting. But put some context on that. They did wrestle, I know, for at least one pay-per-view. It had to be Capital Combat, I'm thinking. And a little more context to that, the world titles were on the line, and I think that's where Doom beat the Steiners to win the tag team titles. So maybe Rick didn't want to drop the belt, which was part of it too.
Well, it might have been, but that's irrelevant too. Mm-hmm. Those guys had contracts. It wasn't like it was costing them anything. They had contracts.
Right.
I mean,
guaranteed.
For the whole, guaranteed on like $700,000 a year. We used to come back into Atlanta sometimes on Saturday morning to go be to TV that morning. Mm-hmm. We'd be waiting around all the baggage claims area, and the Steiners would be, and all the guys were dressed. And because I was a road agent, we're asked to at least wear a sport coat. And so I was dressed. I looked like a suit. But a lot of the guys were in shorts, tank tops, shower shoes. Guys making $800,000 a year.
Right.
And they're waiting to get their bags, and they're all, Steiners, great big muscle guys. And I was standing there with a bunch of other suits, and they're saying, "Oh, look at those guys, man. I don't know what their problem is. I know they're wrestlers and all that. They must not have." And I said, "Oh, you know what I heard?" I said, "That guy that won the red shorts, with his shirt hanging out, that guy makes $800,000 a year. And to wrestle. Can you believe that?" And they looked at me and looked at him and they shut the F up, because they weren't making that kind of money. And I said, those guys can afford to dress like that. So anyway, I left it. I said, before I give you the finish, any problem? Anybody? No, and nobody said anything.
Oh.
So I gave them the finish, and that's what they did. That same pay-per-view, I got two big Samoan. They weren't up in secret. It might have been relatives, sons or nephews or something.
Oh, yeah.
And they told me to tell Ole to go F himself and all that. And those guys would make you nervous because one of them, you'd be talking to one, the other one, these guys weighed about 300 pounds each. They were both 2 or 3 inches taller than me. I'd be talking to one, and he would
that was the twins. That was Fatu and Samoan Savage there, yeah. Fatu, his sons are the Uso brothers, the twins that are wrestling in WWE today. So that's their lineage. But yeah, Fatu and his twin, who was Tama in the WWF by this point. I think he was Samoan Savage in WCW. But yeah, they worked that pay-per-view too. They worked Tommy Rich and I think Mike Rotunda.
Yeah, and they told me, I'm talking to one. I'm facing both of them. Well, I'm talking to one. The other one walks around behind me.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, he's like breathing in the back of my head. And I mean, I don't know why they do that crap, I mean, well, why? What's the purpose? We're on the same team here, guys.
Right.
I'm not the coach on the other team. I'm not working against you. So they told, tell Ole to go F himself and all that. So I went and got Ole, and we're walking down there. I'm taking my coat off, and he walks up there. They were in a little screened off room, not little, but it was narrow. It was like a meeting room out on the convention floor, where there was enough room for like a big table with like 10 or 12 chairs around it, and like 4 or 5 feet on each side. And there were glass windows on both sides of it, so you could see in. I only went to the door, and I went to walk in behind him, and he shut the door and shut it in my face and locked it. And turned around. He said, I could hear him. He turned around. He says, am I fighting you both at the same time or one at a time?
Wow.
And yeah. Now, he's got the ability to fire them,
Sure.
which is a nice thing to have. That's like having brass knucks on both hands and both feet.
Right.
In a sense. But that wasn't what he was going to do.
It sounds old school, man.
Well, that's your last resort. Because once you throw that out there, you can't back out or back up. No, he just said, well, okay, you're going to, and the reason why is they said they were going to kick his ass. And that's what I was supposed to tell him. So he said, well, is it both at the same time or one at a time? And, he's taking off his watch and
wow.
Neither one of them walked around behind him on that one. They both stayed well away from him. He got a serious attitude change, and they went right out there and did what he asked them to do.
Crazy stuff, man.
Oh, man, you talk about, and since we talked earlier today about how much I respected Ole, it was for things like that, that kind of, whether it be machismo or, just bravado or just psychology. I don't know. But whatever it was, he dominated. He didn't go in there and say, well, look, guys, blah, blah, But yeah, that was we're talking about Ron Simmons and Butch Reed. I was really impressed with both of them. But Butch was, because he was mysterious to me in a way. I didn't know. He didn't share much. I was just really impressed with him. If I needed somebody to watch my back out of the whole business, I would have picked him.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I would have picked him.
I've heard he was a tough dude. But yeah, you don't hear a whole lot about his personal life. I heard he was in the rodeo once upon a time as well. So kind of an interesting life. You gotta have some brass balls riding a horse or fighting a bull. So
I don't think it was one of those rodeo clowns.
No,
I think it was probably a bullfighter.
Not that there's anything wrong with a rodeo clown either. Those guys.
No, those guys are tough.
Yeah. No, I just don't see him running from the bull. That's the thing.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I just love that. It's so interesting to know that you were a part of that 1990 era in WCW, because lots of crazy shit went on right around that time there within the company. And maybe we can jog your memory down the line. I would love to extensively talk about what you do recall or what you were involved in during your period there during Ole's booking back in the for Turner. But for now, we'll roll on here. Now, you mentioned a name to me last time we were on the air, and I'm sure it would have crossed my mind anyway, because I know you traveled or worked with him off and on in Georgia and in Florida, and maybe even I think he might have went through when you guys were starting up in Knoxville. But the name Thunderbolt Patterson came up, and I was just curious your memories of working with or around Thunderbolt.
The first time I was with Bolt was in Australia. I'm not sure. I might have met him. It doesn't matter. We got together in Australia. And we hit it off. I mean, we had our own rooms. In Sydney, our place that was our base, everybody had their own room. Well, let's put it this way. I always had my own room because they were cheap, and you're on the road with guys all week. Why would you want to go and be in the road? You want some privacy if you finally can get it. And usually your hotel room was the only place you could get any privacy. So, but Bolt and I met there, or we came together there, and we hit it off. I liked him. I was, again, fairly green compared to him. He was fun to be around. He had kind of a presence to him, and man, could he snore. We when we went to places like New Zealand, Barnett would put two of us to a room. So Bolt and I always roomed with each other because, again, I liked his company, and I guess it reciprocated. But he could snore. I was lucky. I had a tape deck, and I had the earphones, so I could put my earphones on and play music, and I'd get deep enough asleep that he wouldn't wake me up. But it was one of those snores that was sleep apnea and all that, where you stop breathing and all of a sudden you start back up with a big snort. Sounds like a 300-pound pig get kicked in the butt. But I mean, that was, that's not to detract from Bolt. He was a lot of fun to be around. Good sense of humor and good talent, great talent. Later on, when I was assistant to Louis Tillett in Florida. I think maybe it was the first time I had worked in the office, and Bolt called me. He had Ole and Bolt lived around Atlanta somewhere, and Ole had connections to him off and on when I was nowhere around. He had a lot of interaction with Bolt that was somehow frustrated Ole. I guess Bolt would be there and everything would be great for a while, and then it'd go off the rails somehow.
Okay.
But anyway, he called me. I was living in Florida, and I had my own home there. And he called me and asked if he could come in, if I could get him booked in there. And again, I thought he was a great talent, and I didn't see any reason why not. So checked with Louis, and so Bolt, I think he had to take the bus down. He didn't have a car, and it was only Atlanta, so it wasn't that far. And he stayed with me until he got his first check, 4 or 5 days, and then we put the belt on it. We put the Florida Championship, the belt. We put a belt on, but the Florida belt. That was the one that got matches fought for the most. The tag teams might have been close, but the Florida heavyweight belt was the one that got the most action. Let's put it that way. Anyway, in Miami, I remember I had him beat me twice in one night. He beat me once, and 1, 2, 3, and right. After he left, I got on a microphone and bitched and moaned and how he cheated and all this, and had him come back and hit him with the mic when he got in the ring and went to shoulder break him or something, and had him beat me again because I wanted to get him over. And I was over enough in Miami that I could do that and keep my heat. I would do something the next week that I knew what I was coming back with the next week. So he's got the belt. He went from being virtually broke. I think he made $1,100 second week. I had the opportunities to see the payoffs. Somewhere a week without TV that week or the next week, Louis wants to get him involved in a angle with somebody, and he's going to have the guy screw Bolt out of the belt. Maybe it was a couple weeks later, but he's gotten over by this time, and he's right away. I think he'd been there before, but he was a good talent. I mean, the guy was very engaging, and everybody liked. He wasn't just popular with black fans, white fans.
He had that charisma, man.
Yeah, he was every man. So, Louis came to me and said, "Bob, Bolt, come talk to Bolt, see what the problem is." I went to him. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, want me to lose the belt?" I said, "Yeah, Bolt." He said, "We're going to do a deal," and he basically refused.
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, get your stuff and go. Get out, man. I'm sorry."
I know he had an on again, off again relationship with Ole, because Ole was using him as late as after Vince took over TBS, and Ole had to go look for guys to replace some of the talent he lost after that. I know Thunderbolt was there all the way till Crockett took over, and working with Ole and whatnot. And I think he stuck around a little bit there afterwards during that Georgia crossover into Crockett land in '85. But it's kind of interesting to see how many times Thunderbolt burned bridges and somehow was still welcome back at some point.
Well, he was. It wasn't like he was malicious. You just never knew why. And he just left. I mean, why would a guy, to this day. Now, I saw Bull. I've seen him at Waterloo the last 2 or 3 years, and it's always good to see him. And all this is water under the bridge, and we all make mistakes. I mean, I told her earlier, I was doing, that was private, wasn't it? I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing. I knew better, and not just in the business. In my personal life, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes, and that's just part of the human condition. But yeah, Bull hurt himself with doing that kind of stuff. But again, he had a great talent, and maybe one of these days, maybe next year or the year after, if the time's right, I might ask him if he remembers why he did that. It'd be interesting to know. But
yeah, I know, he had many lawsuits against, the governing body of the NWA and how they were trying to monopolize the business. And I'm not saying that wasn't exactly what they were doing by any stretch of the imagination. But, I know he had a lot of issues and caused a lot of issues within the wrestling world in between working for the territories himself from time to time. And like I said, Ole was using him as late as the mid 80s, and he was in and out of WCW at points, working behind the scenes a little bit in the early 90s. I know he appeared on TV a few times. Not as well. He did Wrestle Slamboree in '93. So I mean, yeah, so he's still got to be on pay-per-view in 1993. Bob Roop didn't get to do that. Damn it.
You telling me that maybe Bolt. I'm trying to analyze now Thunderbolt's behavior with me under that new light you just shown on it. Maybe he had made $1,100. Maybe he had enough money to go back home and survive for a month or two, living low on the hog, and go back to his protesting, because he obviously felt like he was, and this it ties right in with what I was talking about you in private, about the effect that business has on you as a person.
Yeah.
And what it does to your self-respect and that kind of thing. And maybe that was part of what he was doing. All I know is that when I see Bolt today, I like him. I mean, it wasn't like he hurt himself much more than he hurt me.
Right.
It's the same way that, I gave him my credibility and some of my heat in Miami, but it's easy enough to get it back. I had the ability to put myself on TV and, do all kinds of horrible things. But, maybe looking at Bolt as kind of a talent of another kind, not just strictly what he did in the business, but what he did about the business too.
Yeah. I don't mean to cut you off, Bob. I'm sorry. You were talking about him. I was just replaying some of the footage I've seen of him in my head. And I was going to say a lot of people say that Dusty Rhodes took a lot of his mannerisms, walking around the ring and strutting around, if you know what I mean. And maybe even some of the gift of gab from Thunderbolt Patterson.
Yeah. And I did too. I thought that, especially his speech, except now his cadence and his timing on his speech was very much like Bolt. Mm-hmm. But from reading Terry Funk's book, what I found out was that Dusty had a lisp.
Right.
And and which I didn't know, because when he and Murdoch were together, he never interviewed. Murdoch did all the talking, at least as I remember. So when Dusty started talking, and it's Dusty Rhodes, he had this, he could use this voice that lisping and all that didn't stick out as being, because he wasn't trying to be real serious. He was doing shtick. A big difference in somebody, like Butch Reed never did shtick. Butch said, I'm gonna go out there and kill the guy, and that was, basically. I
think you would have got another one of those Butch Reed faces had you told him to go out there and do a shtick.
yeah.
Although Vince got him to dye his hair blonde for a year, so there was that much anyway. Although the paychecks were there, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, he got paid big money. Yeah, that's funny. You know what? What about this?
Okay.
For our fans out there, or people who can tolerate us, whatever. Maybe this summer, I'll try. If Bolt's there, I'll try to talk to him. Maybe even do an interview with him and put it on our podcast.
Yeah, any of your comrades are welcome to join. Down the road whenever they want to. If you guys want to have some discussions, share some old fun memories, that would be fun.
Well, you know what I thought? I've been thinking that all along. What I thought was that we would establish, which I feel we're well on our way to doing, we'd establish our product here, what we're producing, and they can listen to it and see if they want to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might not. I think about Baron von Raschke. He's a dear buddy of mine.
Right.
He might not like the idea of, the fact to talk about the blade or whatever, the inner workings of the business. And then, maybe there'd still be a way to do interviews with them, with the idea that would be off the topic. We wouldn't be talking about that. And the other thing is we might be able to do an interview of the person in character. I could interview Baron von Raschke as opposed to
That's all the people need to know.
Exactly. Well, that's all you need to know. Jim Raschke's not around anymore. The Baron's taken over.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a interview George Steele, the late Jim Myers, did 20 years ago. They sat him down for an interview, and they said, "We're here with George the Animal Steele," and he just he goes, "Hey," and he's like, and then finally they don't understand what's going on. He goes, "Well, are you here to interview George Steele, or are you interviewing Jim Myers?" And I love the way he did that to them. They were confused he's like, because if you want to interview George Steele, you can, but you're not. I'm not going to be talking like this. So I just thought that was pretty clever on his. I thought a little bit at the time. I was like, what an asshole, but at the same time, I mean, he's telling the truth, right? So George Steele's a character, right?
Oh, well, he was, in person. We shared when we were on tour together in Japan. We shared a room a couple times, and he was down. I mean, as a gym teacher in school.
Yeah, he would tell those stories about how he would go. In the summers, he would go like to New York and work Bruno, and then he would go back to, what was it, Michigan? Yeah, it was Michigan. And he would go back and gym coach or whatever, everything he did at school during the school year. They'd say, "But I see you in the magazines and I saw you on TV." No, that wasn't me.
Yeah, he was a good guy. He was a good character. Oh man,
he was your tag team partner in Japan, man. You told that story. We'll have to get more into that when we talk about more of your tours of Japan. I can't wait till we get into more of the George Steele stuff. That'll be fun.
Well, one thing with George is you don't want to ever get behind a crowd that's facing him, because if he charges them, you're going to get run over.
Yeah, that's what you told us.
yeah. That picture you see of me sitting in a dressing room looked like I'm in my underwear, where it's on my Facebook page.
Yes.
That's shortly after. You can't see it yet, but if you go in a close-up, you'll see my right eye is starting to. No, my left eye is starting to.
So that was from that tour.
Yeah,
where the lady got shoved into your face.
Immediately after I got run over.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was like within a half hour. Yeah, it's starting to turn blue. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So, yeah,
you got a picture from that situation. Oh man.
Well, he was fun to be with. Again, what you see is sometimes not what you get.
Right.
But.
I got a couple more names here, bigger names people will definitely they should be able to recognize most of these names, honestly, but there's a couple that just actually came to me while we were talking here, because you were in Florida after you left Georgia, after Crockett bought them out and took over TBS. I don't really remember exactly when they were in Florida. It would have been around this time, and it was a tag team called the PYTs, Pretty Young Things. It was Coco Beware and Norvell Austin, and I didn't know if you crossed paths with them at all down in Florida.
No.
Okay.
No,
I wasn't sure if that was it would have been interesting. I would have liked to have gotten your take on that entire situation, but that's okay. Did you ever have I guess you probably never ran into Coco, because he worked Memphis and then he worked for Watts when you weren't there. And then he wound up with Vince. So you probably never really got to spend any time around Coco Beware, who was a small dude, but man, could he go.
I nothing, you know what? Yeah. I'll look up, I'll do some research between shows. I'll let you know next time.
Okay, no sweat there. So another name you mentioned in passing before in an altercation. You didn't have an altercation with him, but he was there, I think, when you had your altercation with Blackjack. It was Tony Atlas, and you said you had like a story or something in regards to Tony.
Yeah, and 83, working with Ole. We got a call from Bill Watts. He said. Tony Atlas is going to be calling you. He said you can take him. He said you can make money with him. He'll get over. He said don't use him for 8 weeks, and no matter what's going on, don't use that after 8 weeks. He'll be done. And I thought, all right. So Tony came in. Just like Ernie said, he got over like $1 million, and in about the 8-week period, he and Paul Orndorff were coming back from a show, and they got into a argument about who was a better shooter. So they got out of the car to see, and it ended up where I think Tony grabbed the bear hug on Paul, which was a really stupid move to make, and Paul bit his ear halfway off.
Wow.
And so that ended the fight, and they had to take Tony up to the emergency room or hospital they could find, get his ear sewn back on, and then he disappeared. Well, that was on a Saturday night. He didn't show up Sunday. And the following Friday, he was booked in a cage match in Macon that we'd spent the last 4 weeks, well, every other week.
Right.
We didn't run it every week. We spent 2 different shows building up this cage match, and we couldn't find him. So we called around, called his wife out in California, and she didn't know where he was and everything. So he had been paid, I think it was $1,600 for the week before, and only stopped payment on his check.
Wow.
And so when Luis called California and talked to Tony's wife, his wife said he wasn't there. So a day or two later, the check has been stopped. The wife calls and it turns out she's gone and spent $800. And now that they're all her checks are bouncing because the money wasn't in the account. So she wants to know what we're going to do about it. And we said, well, is Tony there? We got to talk to him before we're going to do anything. Well, just amazingly, he happened to be there.
Wow, imagine that.
I guess he dropped by. So Ole talked to him. He said he was sorry and all this. And Luis arranged for him to fly back. It was like on a Wednesday. Now, this match in Macon is, he's not on top in any other town, but Macon's important, man. If you have to substitute a cage match, I mean, you just kill a town.
Sure.
For at least a month or two. So it cost him thousands and thousands of dollars. So he agreed that he'd come back in. He would come in Atlanta, and then he would, I can't remember. But anyway, he was going to be there. So we waited, didn't make the check good yet. Louise waited a couple hours, and then she checked. And what she found out was that she had booked a flight from him to Atlanta. She called to check on the booking, and she found out that he had called and extended the booking from Atlanta to Charlotte. He was just going to stop in Atlanta and then fly directly to Charlotte on Thursday. So Ole never did make the check good.
Right.
So yeah, and I don't know. I have absolutely no idea why somebody would behave like that. But all I can say is Ernie was right. 8 weeks, that's all you can get.
No.
And so
Ernie was right in this instance.
Yeah. So years later, when Tony was asking Blackjack to mutilate me, it's probably he had that check in mind. So, but it wasn't my doing. I didn't do anything to him.
Right.
I just happened to be, when you're working in management, you're gonna get heat and responsibility and all that. And that's fair. That's only fair. But anyway, I wish him well, whatever he's doing now.
Yeah, I know a long time ago, Tony came out with a book, and he, about his career, and it was titled "Too Much Too Soon." Tony admitted that he got involved in a lot of bad things, a lot of bad habits, and this, that, and the other, and it was just too much too soon in his life. He handed all that money at a young age, and obviously a top star wherever he went there for several years, the late '70s, early '80s. Whether it was New York or Crockett or whatever the case may be. And clearly Ernie Ladd had some, backstory there. He'd seen Atlas come and go a few times, and he kind of knew right about the correct amount of time to keep him booked in the territory. So it's a good thing Ole only had him there for a couple months. So
yeah, well, think about Ernie and Tony. I mean, not to disparage Tony, but Ernie had a solid, substantial background that spoke to developing character.
Right.
You don't become a great athlete without character. Or if you're a homicidal maniac who gets off on violence, maybe. that's not the right kind of character. But usually the rules are such that that person wouldn't last, wouldn't be able to keep themselves within the guideline. If they couldn't pull somebody's eye out or bite a nose off, they're not happy. For Ernie to have developed, the stature that he developed took a lot of work and a lot of effort, a lot of guts, a lot of sacrifice. And not to put Tony down, but Tony was a bodybuilder.
Right.
That takes a lot of work too.
Well, when you said they were going to get him and Tony, or him and Paul Orndorff were going to get into a fight, I was just thinking of Tony's background. I'm not saying Tony couldn't have fight somebody if he needed to, but I just thought, man, that's probably not going to end too well for Tony in that specific instance.
I've never really known I've really never known. I mean, I'm sure there are, but we did a bunch of tough man contests. We did 3. We promoted 3 ourselves, and we worked in one. We fought in one, and there was never the big muscular guys that won. Most of the time, they got beat because they'd blow up. They didn't have the physical conditioning to, and that would go for somebody like Tony too, because you can bench press and curl all day, but what are you doing for your cardiovascular? If you can't get out there and you're carrying all that weight around, your lungs are not designed for any super extended, like 30-second long effort of some guy. So if you're trying to put some guy down, you wouldn't believe how much energy that takes. After not working out for 3 or 4 years after the Olympics, I couldn't go 15 seconds with an Olympic quality person without being totally blown up, even though I was still in fairly decent shape for pro wrestling.
Right.
To get out there and grab somebody and be trying to,
it's a different kind of conditioning.
Oh,
for
man.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, completely. So,
especially on the Olympic level.
Well, and when I had all 13 years of doing that in the bank, I still had some of it down there. Someone who never developed any of that goes out there and tries to do it. No, you don't have a chance unless you get them right away. You smack them, you hit them from behind or something, shoot them. But if you're going to physically try to get somebody, you better not take very long to do it because your body just won't support it. Ernie. And so Ernie was used to physical strength. One of the things that like defensive players did was they were able to use their forearms for forearm smashes. Like wrestlers use a forearm smash. Well, football players could do it. You could smash a guy right in the face with it, right in his face mask on every play. And you had these pads on your shoulders and your legs, but your arms were bare. So you're smacking a guy in the puss on every play.
Sure.
So you're used to it. You're used to that kind of physical violence. So where someone just throwing a punch, that's no big deal. Well, if you've never done it, been in any fights, if you've never been in that kind of a physical confrontation where things are happening that are physical and violent and, take a lot of strength, coordination, hand and eye, all those things, well, you're not going to be good at it. I said earlier that Tony would grab a bear hug on somebody in a fight. Where are the guy's arms? Where are the guy's hands? Where are the guy's thumbs? Well, if they're mine, they're going to be in your eyeballs. Where mine are going to be. If you got a bear hug on me, and where my teeth going to be? They're going to be biting off your nose.
Right.
Because if you're stupid enough to put me in a bear hug, I mean, the idea is if you do beat me, you're going to be able to do whatever you want with me. I'm going to make sure you don't. So I won't do any more than I absolutely have to. But, oh, man, if somebody handed you an advantage to be able to do something like that. So the fact that Tony would ever even talk about shooting and then get into that kind of situation showed he didn't have a clue about what he was doing.
Plenty said there about Tony Atlas, and that's it. Now, I had heard some situation where Tony got into it with Paul before, but I hadn't heard all the specifics like that. So very intriguing, to say the least, and to know that that all went into eventually Tony no-showing some shows there and Ole canceling the check, and just a fun trip back in time to the Georgia territory in that one. Obviously, lots of success by Ole Anderson, but at the same time, he had to deal with headaches from time to time, and clearly he knew how to handle it. Just cancel the check. That finally it doesn't want to work. Well, I won't pay him. So that works out well. Let's see what we got left here as we get close to the end of the program, Bob. How about, now you've told a story before about working Rocky Johnson. Do you have any other Rocky Johnson stories you can share before we in the program here this week?
Well, Rocky was in. Here's one with Rocky and Ernie.
Okay.
And in a way, I hate to tell these negative stories, but I'm not passing judgment here. But it's something that happened that was a moment. Ernie was working in Florida, and he was getting ready to leave. He was willing to do a job, but he didn't want to get pinned. He said, "I can DQ me and all that, but I don't want to." He was going. I don't know where he's going. It doesn't matter. But if people have a tape of you getting beat, they can show it anywhere that they want.
Right.
And they can really mess with you. Yeah, they can mess with you if they want to. So he asked him not to do that. And so now TV was on Wednesday. Jacksonville was on Thursday. Well, he went to Jacksonville, and he's working with Rocky Johnson in a match in Jacksonville. And Rocky's going to beat him 1, 2, 3. And he looks up in the upper reaches of the big dark building there. He sees a camera up there.
Wow. Okay.
On a tripod, and they're filming the match. So he just got out of the ring. He just quit. He just got out of the ring and left.
Okay.
And when Eddie Graham found out about it, he called the Brisco Brothers, or maybe they were at the show and knew about it. But they got together with Ernie down at the Sportatorium. They told him they wanted to talk about it. Anyway, they had an altercation where the Briscoes got messed up, and Ernie was obviously going to leave. And Ernie called Rocky and said, that I'm hoping you didn't go along with this crap because, it's just totally, off the board what they were trying to do there. And Rocky left the next day. He didn't work. He didn't even give a notice. He just took off.
So Rocky quit too then?
Yeah, well, or he last match. You might want to reconsider your options. He didn't have the Rock yet, and he didn't have that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking Rocky at all. I'm not saying he was in on it. I don't think he was. I don't know why he would be.
Right.
Why would you tell him?
It doesn't. I mean, other than putting Rocky over with a pinfall here, it really doesn't serve him to, go in on this. Okay, we're going to film this, but we're not going to tell Ernie, and we'll put you over on TV.
Yeah.
I get that for Rock in that degree, but at the same time, I just don't see where it goes from there. Long term. Is it really worth it?
Well, it was typical. It's one of the reasons that things with Eddie Graham turned out the way they did. He was doing stuff like that. And again, I don't want to get morbid here. There's so many good things that we talk about, but I think sometimes you should just have a contrast. You have to be. It's nice to have something to compare them against. We talked about nice, decent behavior, doing the right thing, and Rocky showing solidarity with Ernie by leaving. That potentially could hurt him. I mean, Graham and call everybody and say, "Hey, this guy walked out on me," and it could hurt him, his future earnings too. So it was a move of character. He should be admired for it. But they shouldn't have involved him in that situation in the first place.
So what happened with the Briscoes and Ladd? Do you know, other than a conversation?
Yeah, I do, but I can't say it.
Okay, all right. Well,
I like Jerry. First of all, Jack was a dear friend. I mean, what I knew of Jack, our time together, I treasure.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, I was a heel most of my career, and I couldn't hang with him.
Right.
It was all from the beginning. Jerry, I've gotten a chance to get to know in current times, and I think it's a sore subject with him. All I know is that he and Jack were both put in. We're talking about the snake pit. It's just ironic that what happened in front of the snake pit, and actually in a parking lot right next to it.
Okay.
But they had stock. They were shareholders in the company.
Right.
And that was one thing, and that's something we haven't talked about. We'll get to down the line somewhere. A lot of times what these promoters did, they would have their guys, like Punk had, and of course, Dory Sr. had Terry and Dory were already stockholders in their company.
Mm-hmm.
But Eddie encouraged Jack and Jerry to buy stock in Florida Championship from wrestling or wrestling from Florida or in Atlanta. And I know they had stock in Atlanta because when Ole lost the company to McMahon,
right,
the Briscoe share was what caused Ole to lose his 51%. But what the promoters would do was say, we're going to give you a chance to be part of ownership, And so the money that you're getting paid to be, say, world champion or top guy goes back into the company, and you own something that might mean something, except where's Championship Wrestling from Florida today? And how much money is it making today? So if you had 100% of it today, it wouldn't be worth anything. I don't think. I mean, unless there's some way I don't know of. So that was kind of a byproduct, because if you're a part of ownership and somebody calls you and says, look, somebody's doing this to hurt our company, you kind of have to act. You have to do something. I know the Briscoes didn't want to have to do anything with Ernie Ladd. I'm sure they liked Ernie. But, they also were, with ownership and with great riches comes responsibility.
I get it. And different times on top of all of that, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure they regretted whatever happened, but, it's water under the bridge.
All right.
Jack, I don't know the extent of the situation with Jack's leaving us, whether it was illness or just old age for him, but he doesn't seem like he'd be that old. I think he was only a few years older than me, but Jerry's still with us, and he's doing okay.
Yeah. So Jack passed away a while ago. I think he was probably in his 60s at the time. Yeah,
he wasn't real old. We'll get into it sometime, but by the time Jack got the world title, something the week before he started working in Florida for the first time, something that he couldn't even maybe fathom the idea that he would ever be NWA champion. By the time he got it, it was sour, like really sour grapes along with it, because he had to sacrifice so much in order to have it.
Right. And then there was the whole situation with the way he won it and everything too, the funks.
And also in the payoffs. So yeah, you can only take being disrespected for so long without it really, really having a bad effect on you, on your whole self-image and the way you look at the world.
Well, at least he quit the way, when he wanted to quit. The story goes, because they sold those shares to McMahon, and then they went to go work for Vince for a little bit. And I don't know what city they were in, but they were getting off the plane, and Jack just looked at the snow. He's used to work in Florida most of the time, and he got up there and looked at the snow one day, and he just said, you know what? I'm retired. I'm done. And he really, truly did. That was it. That was the end of Jack. He just right in the middle of working for Vince. He just retired. I'm not doing this no more. He probably just got tired of everything.
Well, that is a success story, and I'm glad to hear it, because he certainly earned the right to do that. I mean, Jack had a family when he got into business that I don't know if he stayed close to. He had children. I don't know what his relationship with that family was as he went forward and as they grew up, if he was part of their life or vice versa. So there's a sacrifice. One of the things about the business in our era was you had to be gone all the time. And so whatever's going on at home, you're not part of it.
Right.
And that was why I thought I quit.
Okay.
But you're opening up new memory files for me. Has given me a new outlook about why I quit.
Yeah, we're gonna have whole episodes, I'm sure, on those topics.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I've got a Dr. Psychobabble as part of my persona. I'll trot him out down the line. I'll check with you first to make sure I don't make you edit out half the things I say.
Oh man. Oh no, we're good, man. This is a fun episode, really. I mean, we kicked off a little bit, said a little bit about Ole. We actually got to work him in, not even trying to, got to work him in a few times here this episode as well, but really just focused a lot on going back to the Black History Month thing that we were planning on doing, but just covering a lot of these guys and lots of fun and different stories. I love the Butch Reed stuff and the Tony Atlas thing, very interesting, very cool. A bunch of little Ernie Ladd anecdotes in there. So really cool stuff top to bottom this week, Bob.
One last addition, Junkyard Dog.
Yes, well, only reason I didn't mention him was because I figured there's going to be like an entire episode on him. We're doing Mid-South.
Okay.
Yes, no.
Okay.
Please, you mentioned him now. I'm not going to get crapped on by the listeners out there. You mentioned Dog. I have at it.
Well, we'll do the he deserves to have a section devoted a lot to him because he was really remarkable in the fact that he he achieved a tremendous success, and it did affect him. It affected his life, but he stood up to it a lot better than some people did. There's, like I said, that price you pay. And, one of the things we talked about, that $8,000 payoff he got from Paul Bosch might have been one of the worst things that ever happened to him, because that was fairly early in his career. He went on from there to work for WCW and WWF, didn't he? I don't remember.
Yeah, he worked for Vince for quite a few years there. Yeah, they took him from Bill right in the middle of his, he was still peak Dog, main event, and for Mid-South one day, he just randomly disappeared from the territory on Bill. That killed the Cowboy because he was close to Dog. But yeah, he left in August of 84. I think he went to work for Vince, and he worked there for probably about a little over 4 years. And then he really couldn't keep a job after that. In and out of WCW multiple times, due to substance issues and whatnot.
Do you have any idea what kind of money he made to leave Bill?
It was a lot more than whatever he was getting from Bill.
Well,
when Dog first came in to New York, he was kind of like the number 2, whether, anybody wanted him to be or not. And I'm sure Hulk Hogan, much like many of the other guys that were coming in at the time could have easily been in that semi-main spot. They kind of got knocked down a peg or two over time, but I think Dog did a lot of it to himself as well over time with his issues.
Yeah. Well, man, I tell you, it's hard not to have demons, if people that don't have any,
especially when you're flying that high, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, the things that happen, I think about Roddy Piper and remembering him from fresh young when I first met him, and 2 or 3 years in the business, and then years later after he's made it big and we're in Atlanta, and and then fortunately years later when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame at Waterloo, where I got to see him at least on an exit visit together, where he was back being, the positive.
The Roddy you remembered.
The Roddy I remember, not one who was jaded and just eaten up with all the
politics,
and
really. Yeah.
Politics and intrigue it takes to. I've been reading Mick Foley's books, and he's talking about doing interviews for payoff for a contract with Vince McMahon. It's pretty interesting stuff. So that's why I asked the question about what Dog was getting. I'm sure he wasn't going to go. He was making good money with Bill. I'm sure he was, but not compared to, McMahon. McMahon had so many.
I think the story goes, he got his first check for his action figure, that LJN line, the Dog. And it was like more than he'd ever, made in just a year, I guess, in any territory, really. It was like insane. Some of those early action figure line, the money that was coming in for those was just unreal. It was like a paycheck on top of, on top of your annual income.
Do you have an extra figure?
Not in front of me, no. No, I've seen things. Oh, do you?
I do for the Sheik, for Iron Sheik.
Okay.
Or Sheiky Poo, for working up there for, he was a champ, a week, 2 weeks, or whatever.
Right.
Made him the bridge between
Backlund and Hogan.
Yeah. And so he said, we were still tight at the time. He said his first action figure check was $94,000.
Wow.
And the second was $106,000.
Wow.
$1,000.
And that was, that was mid 80s money. I mean, that's more than double that now.
$200,000. Let me think. That's about 5 years of work for me.
About half a million now. So I mean.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember Hillbilly Jim, telling how much ever he got for his. And I said, man, if he made that much, I can't imagine what some of them other guys, got for theirs. So it's crazy.
Well, you have access to, you go from, with WWE, you go from, or any national company, from opposed to a local or even regional, you go from hundreds or thousands of people to millions of people seeing your stuff and having a chance to buy it. If it's, the average is 10% of wherever it is, well, 10% of 100 is 10 people. 10% of 1,000 is 1,000 people. I mean, 100 people.
Right.
10% of 1,000,000 is 100,000 people.
That's a lot of people.
So when 100,000 people are buying your book or whatever it is, now you're talking about some serious change.
Sure.
So, yeah, well, I'm happy for those guys.
But yeah, we'll have plenty of time for Dog here. I'm not trying to cut anything short. He's on my list. I just figured let's get through these other guys because I didn't know when we might mention some of them again. But Dog, I know he's going to pop up over and over as time goes on. We're going to run through your entire Mid-South career. You're going to have plenty of memories of working with the Dog, hopefully, with the storylines and just the matches you've told in the past, some of the story. I don't mind doing the job to the Dog on TV. I'll do it twice if I have to.
Well, I think one thing that stands out, and it was with Ernie too, and I'm not saying anybody that I don't mention that it's different, but Dog was a big fan of white people and yellow people and red people and all different kinds of people without selling out, without being anybody who he was. He was admirable no matter what his race was.
Yeah, he transcended.
He was admirable. Yes.
Yeah.
He transcended it, and that makes him special. And that's why I wanted to mention him, because again, the people in the business, and I don't want to sound like a jerk here, but it was hard to respect. Let's put it this way. I said it earlier. I didn't respect myself for some of the things I allowed to happen to me when I was a pro wrestler. So it's hard to respect other people who allowed the same thing to happen. I'm happy to say that I can respect people like Dog and Ole, and, I'm happy to be able to do that. And Ernie, yeah. So anyway, thanks for that, my friend.
No, man, another fun week, man. Just covering a lot more names throughout the history of the business. Lots of guys you came in contact with, and lots of various, they certainly vary, the stories between, but that's white, black, like you said, brown, yellow, red, green, polka dots. Everybody's different. So, and that's kind of fun. So you go from maybe not messing with Butch Reed to loving the Dog to Ernie Ladd's his own character. Just lots of different stories, lots of different guys here. And I really enjoyed this week, Bob.
Well, me too, Ray. I missed us not being able to work together last week, but good things come to all those who wait. So we waited, and now we were able to get something out. I enjoyed it too.
No, I'm glad we got this show out, because I'm probably going to be light on shows this week across my brand because I'm having software issues. My software is acting wonky. I'm probably going to have to reinstall that. And then I got a new computer I got to get put together as well. So I just got a lot of other things going on. So I'm happy of all the shows we were able to put out this week that it was going to be the Wrestling Stoop.
Well, me too, Ray. Thanks a lot, my friend. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And next time we're around, guys, it's going to be a dedication episode to one Ole Anderson. Can't wait to hear all of the stories. I'm going to come up with some questions too, and just maybe see if you have any memories of certain things. But at the end of the day, I'm looking forward to talking a lot more about the booker, the wrestler, the promoter. My God, he was pretty much everything. We're going to talk all about Ole Anderson next time around.
Man, that sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, and I think that's going to finish things up here this week. I want to thank you once again, Bob, for enlightening us, sharing some of your fond memories and stories throughout wrestling history. And a quick reminder, guys, to go follow and friend Bob Roop over at facebook.com/poorBobRoop. And of course, as always, I am your co-host, Ray Russell. You can find me on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And please don't forget that $5 all access tier over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. So many gifts for just $5. Every penny of your donations goes right back here into keeping programs like this alive. So until next time, I want to thank all of you again for your kind support, and we'll be back soon with more of the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop.